Morning, Parkway. Y'all ready to worship today? The King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Hey, I also want to say hello to our friends that are with us on Facebook. We're glad you're worshiping here with us today. I want to start you out this way. This week is kind of famous for something called Thanksgiving, right? So I hope you've had a great 2024 giving thanks, but I'm going to run 4 questions by you. You ready? Are you thankful today for the breath in your lungs? Oh, that's good. I was really worried, but I was going to say, if I can't hear you, then I don't know how thankful you are. I am too. Now look around you. Second question. Are you thankful for some of those people around you? Now, not every one of, no, I'm kidding. Probably, it should be every one of them, right? But look around. Number 3. Don't miss this question, folks. We are freely worshiping here today. Are you thankful for that? I'm thankful that we can gather here today and freely worship. And finally, the best one of all, and you're with me here, I bet, I'm thankful for Jesus, but I'm going to be very specific. I'm thankful, and I hope you are too, because he did not regard equality with God something to be held on to. What did he do? He came to earth. He took on human form. He took on flesh, didn't he, for you and I. And then what did he do? He was obedient all the way to the point of death. Folks, don't miss that point today. We have no hope except for Jesus. And because he did that, because he took our penalty and paid that price, we now know his love, and we're going to live forever. And if that doesn't help you get ready to worship, then I'm not sure what else I can do for you today. We're going to worship together in just a moment. We're going to greet each other in a moment too. But first, to our guests, we're glad you're here, and we hope we'll make you know that we're glad you're here. But if you'd like to sort of register and say, hey, I'm here and I'd like to know more about Parkway, there's a QR code in front of you. There's one on the program or bulletin that you have. You can find it at our website as well. For those of our friends on Facebook, we'd love to hear more from you and know more about you. And folks, I want to thank you too. Here's something else, my final Thanksgiving. I'm thankful for how we walk together as brothers and sisters, and as part of that you are giving actively to help Parkway do ministries not only here, but around the world as well. So everybody, please, on your feet, let's take time to greet each other in the love of Christ.
Good morning, everybody. You guys doing all right? I hope you are primed and ready to worship. Thank you for Bobby for centering our hearts on Thanksgiving. Let's lift our voices today. Come on. When the doubt in my way tries to steal what you saved, saying I have no reason to praise, I will give thanks. Yes, I will give thanks. And when the roar that I hear is the voice of my fear, trying to silence this hope in my heart, I will give thanks. Yes, I will give thanks. A song of thanksgiving is my battle cry. With joy as my weapon, I'll stand and defy the light of the dark with my hands lifted to the sky. Come on, sing it out. And I will rejoice. speak your name. Oh, yes, I'll speak your name. Oh, no song of thanksgiving is my battle cry. With joy as my weapon, I'll stand and defy the lie of the dark with my hands lifted to the sky. And I will rejoice, I will rejoice, I will dance in your kindness and claim every yes and amen. Oh, I will rejoice, I will rejoice. Let's sing this together. The joy of the Lord is our strength. Come on, lift your voice today. The joy of the Lord, the joy of the Lord, the joy of the Lord is my strength. And I'll never stop, no, I'll never stop. No, nothing can stop my praise. And the joy of the Lord, the joy of the Lord, the joy of the Lord is my strength. And I'll never stop, no, I'll never stop. No, nothing can stop my praise. I will rejoice, I will rejoice, and I will dance in your kindness and claim every yes and amen. Oh, I will rejoice, I will rejoice, and I will shout of your goodness forever again and again. I will shout, yes, I will shout of your goodness forever again and again. Yes, I will shout of your goodness forever again and again. I am holding on to faith because I know you'll make a way. And I don't always understand, and I don't always get to see, but I will believe it, I will believe it. You make mountains move, you make giants fall, you use songs of praise to shake prison walls. I will speak to my fear, I will preach to my doubt. You were faithful then, you'll be faithful now. there is a line at the beginning of that song that I love. It says right off the top that I'm holding on to faith. And there's sometimes that I have to piggyback a little bit more to the end of that line. And I have to say that I'm holding on to faith for dear life. Anybody been there? You feel like, man, I'm holding on, but I'm barely holding on, right? Some of you, and you're there today, like you're there like right now. Because it's easy to say that we're holding on to faith when we pay the bills, we put money in savings, we got some left over, right? But what about when we don't know how ends are gonna meet? It's a lot harder to say that. Sometimes, I'm just holding on for dear life. Or it's easy to say that when we're healthy, right? The kids are healthy, everybody's good. But what about when they're not? What about when we have to say goodbye to a loved one? Like, am I holding on to anything except just for dear life in that moment, And so sometimes our life is just so heavy. And I've been there. And you might be there right now. Know that you're in good company, right? But one of the beautiful things that we see, I love so much in David's writing in the Psalms, but he shows us a couple really, really key things that we need to know in those times. In Psalm 34, he says, that I waited patiently for the Lord, and he inclined to me, and he heard my cry. And we learn really quickly right there that we serve a God who listens. We serve a God who hears, which honestly should probably just stop us in our tracks right there. Like, that's enough. But then he also tells us in Psalm 40, he says, I sought the Lord, and he answered me. So we don't just serve a God who listens. We actually serve a God who answers and responds. How crazy is that? The God of the universe would take time to listen to us, little old us, and would actually have an answer. Would say, I'm not just going to leave you on your own. Like, I'm with you. Man, as we sing these words, and these are words that we need in our daily life to know that we serve a God that we can go to, and he's going to incline his ear to listen to our cry. And he's got an answer. He's not leaving us on our own. You are not forsaken. So if you find yourself and you're saying, Lord, I'm trying to follow that path. I'm trying to walk by faith and not by sight, and I'm holding on for dear life, and maybe that's just me right here and right now. Just know that you can cry out to the God of the universe because he listens. He inclines his ear to your cry, and he answers. Let's continue to worship him this morning.
Never fail. He will never fail. fail. He will never fail. I trust in God, my Savior, the one who will never fail. He will never fail.
Father God, we put our trust solely in you today. Lord, it's something we don't just want to say, but it's something we want to believe with all of our hearts. Because it's not just enough to know you. It is not just enough to say that we trust you, Lord. We want to be able to say it with our actions when life is hard. Or when the rubber meets the road, you are the one that we cling to. You are the rock that we run to. Because you hear, because you listen to the cries of your people and you answer. Lord, you are worthy of all the praise that we could offer, so much more. And we just love you with all of our hearts. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen. You guys can take a seat. First through third grade, you guys are dismissed.
Weird at all, was it? Silent meditation. You know, God will speak in the noise, he'll speak in the quiet. I'm glad that you are here worshiping with us today. Be in prayer for our teenagers as they are gone on camp for fall break, and be with our ATM mission trip. They're gone serving the Lord, and we're glad that our church is beyond these walls. We're glad that we get up and go. We don't just meet and sing and to worship, which is great and it's powerful, and we need to do that, but we are also a church on the move who believes in serving others and going other places. And so we are glad that others get to go and do that. Some are traveling back today, some are coming back tomorrow. So be in prayer for those as they are going out and serving the Lord in the name of his name and his son Jesus, but also as ambassadors of the Parkway family. So welcome to worship today. I'm so glad that you're here online or in person as we continue this series that we're calling Fear Not. We've talked about a lot of different fears, and maybe you can resonate with some of them as we've walked through. We've talked about how Elijah was in some moments of despair and he wanted to give up. We've seen others who are the spiritual giants who had failures because of their fear. We talked about Peter walking on the water, and he experienced anxiety and panic, and he started to sink. We saw people worry about worry, and I'm pointing behind me, but it's on the floor because I guess we got victory over our worry today. But Lot's wife, she was worried about trusting God with her future, and she got stuck in her present. And maybe you could have resonated with some of that. You can identify with some of those people who let the fear of the world or the fear of something prevent them from being what God wanted them to be. And today we're going to look at, finally, someone who gained victory over fear. They did not let the fear overcome them. And today we're going to look at Joshua, who faced the fear of failure, the barrel behind me that does represent the fear of failure, and yet he did not let it overcome him, and he found victory in the Lord. And I hope that you'll see today in God's word how you too can have victory over fear. The fear of failure is a fear of paralysis, because not only are you afraid of failing yourself, but you're afraid of disappointing other people. The fear of failure has more implications than just you. It's also about you disappointing people that are important to you. For example, you might have a fear of disappointing your parents, and so you have this fear of failure in school or in your life or who you marry or the job you have because of the expectations of your parents. You might have a fear of your spouse or friends. You don't want to be a disappointment to them. You might worry about disappointing a coach. Yesterday, Heather and I had our basketball practice. We are coaching once again upper basketball. And I've coached all levels, and Heather helped me for most of those. We've done kindergarten all the way up to 7th grade, so I've done some of that coaching before. I've even had a chance to coach in other sports, high school sports. But this year, we decided that we were going to jump back in at the beginning. And Heather and I are coaching kindergarten, 4- and 5-year-old basketball. So we had this practice yesterday, right? Our second practice. And I have all these ideas that we're going to be running screens, and we're going to be like pick and roll, and we're going to do that. And the kids get out there, and they've never even touched a basketball before. And so, but I see in their eyes, they have this desire to not disappoint their coach. And they want so bad to try. And we get out there and we practice, and things are looking pretty good, and they can dribble to the goal, and they can kind of shoot it, and sometimes it goes in, and I can even get them to come back. And then we decided, let's scrimmage the other team that's on the other court. And in that moment, this fear of failure, of disappointing their coach, just overwhelms them. And I'm trying to get them to realize that that's our goal, and this is their goal, and this is offense, and this is defense. And this is what my kids did. As soon as we started playing, this is what a couple of them started doing. That's it. That's all they did. They don't know what was going on. They're just looking around. I'm like, they think they're doing something. They think they're going, and they're going nowhere. They're just paralyzed in place, and this is what they did. I was like, okay, Zachary, Simeon, Hudson, remember what we talked about? Remember, hands out, feet apart, bend your knees, defense. And what they do? Looking at me, they go, like, not me, the ball, the guy with the ball. Like, what are you talking about? Where? And as they go over there, and they go, okay, and then they go, that's all they could do. They're so concerned about disappointing me or their parents, right? They don't want to disappoint their coach, so if you don't try, then you can't fail and you can't disappoint. And they're standing still, marking time, doing nothing, going nowhere because of this fear of failure. Maybe you can relate that sometimes you're so afraid that you do nothing and you just stop and you just hunker down and you just, I don't know what to do or where to go. I don't know how I can get victory in my life. The obstacles in my life are so big. There's just no way that I can ever have victory in my life. And so the fear of failure and disappointing your family or your spouse or your parents, or listen to this, disappointing God. He's called you to be a follower of Jesus, and yet you fail and you fail and you fail. You can't get victory over that sin, over that attitude, over the actions, and that fear of failure to God, of disappointing the God who created you and loves you, calls you just to stop and to do this in your spiritual walk. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. And so you just do nothing. Today we're going to look at the story of Joshua, starting in Joshua chapter 5, and we're going to watch him face this enormous fear in his life of failure. I want you to watch how he gained victory over it and how you and I can have victory over the fear of failure as well. If you have your Bibles, go ahead and turn to Joshua chapter 5. And I'll catch you up on the story. God has told them that they're headed to the promised land. He took them out of Egypt through 40 years of wilderness. Moses is now gone. Joshua, you're the guy. You need to take them into the promised land. A lot of pressure, right? You're the guy that's going to lead them into everything that I planned for all these hundreds of years for. The land I promised Abraham, and now you're going to take them in there, and you're going to win the day. And the very first thing they encounter when they cross over into the Jordan River and they get to the other side is this humongous obstacle that's before them. And I want you to see the promise that God has to them as they're heading into these obstacles. And we're going to look at Joshua chapter 5, starting with verse 13. Look at what God's promise to him As they come out of the Jordan River, heading into this huge obstacle, God says this. Now, when Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up. He saw a man standing in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand, and Joshua went up to him and asked, "Are you with us, or are you for our enemies?" "Neither," he replied, "but as a commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come." This is the archangel Michael. He's the captain of the guard. He's the head of all of God's armies. He has appeared to Joshua. And how did Joshua respond? He fell face down to the ground in reverence. And he said, "What message does my Lord have for the servant?" The commander of the Lord's army replied, "Take off your sandals, for the place where you're standing is holy." And Joshua did so. He's saying God's presence is with you, Joshua. Whatever you're about to face, it's going to be okay. Don't be afraid to go and do and to be what I've asked you to do and to be, because you're on holy ground. You're in the presence of God. And in reverence, he took off his sandals. Keep going, chapter 6, verse 1. Now Jericho was tightly shut up because of the Israelites, and no one went out, and no one came in. And the Lord said to Joshua, "I have delivered Jericho into your hands, along with the king and its fighting men." He said, "I have already delivered Jericho into your hand." You haven't fought the battle yet, but I've already determined the outcome. You are heading into something that's big in your life, and yet I've already declared that you're going to have victory because I am with you. And when you and I head into battles in our life, it is so encouraging to know that the Lord is with you, and he is already preparing for you to be victorious. The first thing I want you to see in this story today is that Joshua is encountering some overwhelming obstacles. There is an overwhelming obstacle. The first thing he has to do, he has to go up against this giant city that's called Jericho. Jericho was it was impenetrable kind of walls. No one is going to beat the walls of Jericho. Nobody is going to take this city because the walls are enormous. It is an overwhelming obstacle for him to think that he's going to be able to do this. But that's the order of God. You need to go in and take this first city right off the bat. An impossible task. You need to have victory over Jericho. But God, I can't do that. But the angel just told him, God's going to deliver it into your hands. He is already going to do it. But the problem with Jericho is the walls were just too high. And the walls were something that he could not overcome. How high were they? Look at this next picture. As I described the walls, at the very bottom, you see the little tiny men. You see them at the very bottom right there? That's the scale of them. That first section of walls is 15 feet high. It's built on a 35-degree angle with the stones completely smooth. No one can climb it, and no one can scale it. But not only that, at the top of those 15 feet, the next section of a wall is a brick wall, and it is 6 feet thick, and it is over 26 feet high. So you take your 15 and you take your 26, you're talking about 41 feet right there, just at the bottom, where no ladder is going to work, no siege weapons is going to work, no towers are going to roll up against it and have any kind of effect. And then you have this dirt burn, if you would, this barricade that goes behind it for all those feet. And at the crest of that embankment is another wall at the beginning of that upper wall. It's starting at 46 feet and going on up. You're talking about 50 to 60 feet of walls. There is nothing that man had at their disposal at this time that could defeat this kind of a defense. Nothing, not ballistas and not trebuchets, and not siege towers and digging under the wall and starting fires. Nothing that they did at that time would be successful against this. This is an obstacle that is completely impenetrable. And this is the task that Joshua has. You have to come and defeat this city. The city itself had 2 levels of walls. They had an outer wall and an inner wall. This picture shows it pretty well. You got the outer wall, and then you have the inner wall. And together, all the way around, it's 1.5 miles around. And Joshua's looking at this going, how in the world am I going to defeat Jericho? It is impossible, God. This obstacle before him was overwhelming. He said, there's no way I can do what God's asking me to do. I'm never going to be able to lead these people to victory. And this fear of failure starts creeping into his heart about, how am I going to do this? I'm supposed to be the leader. I'm the general. I'm supposed to have all the answers. And yet this overwhelming obstacle is something that I cannot defeat. Can you relate to that? Are there things that go on in your life that look like the walls of Jericho to you? Look like they're 50 to 60 feet high. You say, there's nothing I can do. I have tried and failed, and I've tried and failed. And there's nothing that I can do to break through. God, it's impossible. And sometimes that fear of failure, I'm going to fail the Lord again, and therefore I just quit trying. And I just stand still. And I feel like I'm trying to do something, but I'm doing nothing because of this overwhelming fear of failure, because the obstacles in our life are just too big. The second thing I want you to see, it wasn't just the overwhelming obstacle, because this was really God's fight. This wasn't really a fight for Joshua to fight. This was a fight that only God could fight and only God could win. If he tries to do it on his own, Joshua is not going to be successful. Let's look at chapter 6, verse 3. And this is God's command, that this is God's fight, and God does not fight the way you and I fight. Sometimes the way God fights doesn't make any sense, and it's frustrating. Look what he tells them to do. March around the city once with an armed men. Do this for 6 days. Have 7 priests carry trumpets of ram horns in the front of the ark. And on the 7th day, march around the city 7 times when the priests blow in the trumpets. And when you hear them sound the long blast on the trumpets, have all the people give a loud shout, and the wall of the city will collapse, and the people will go up. Every man will go straight in. What a weird way to fight a battle against a giant city with walls. We're going to march around once during the day, and then we're going to blow some horns, and then we're going to go home, and we're going to go eat some dinner. We're going to cook out a fire, and we're going to have a fellowship, and that's all we're going to do. And then you're going to do it again the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And on the 7th day, you'll do it 7 times, and then at the end of that, you will blow the horn, and you will shout a praise to the Lord, and then he will bring the walls crumbling down. And I'm sure there was some great conversations at the fire, like, what are we doing? That's not how you're supposed to fight a war. I'm sure the generals want to say, we need to go cut down some trees, and we need to build some trebuchets. We need to shoot rocks over the wall, and we need to build some towers and some 60-feet ladders. And that's how you fight a war. And Joshua would have said, no, that's not what God wants, because God is going to give us the victory. We can't win the day because only God can bring victory. When you and I see that only God can bring victory in our life, you can keep trying the way that everybody else tells you to try. You can keep trying to do it the way the world tells you to do it, and you will still not have victory in your life. It is only when you trust in God and you do it his way and realize that God does not fight in the way that you and I fight. He fights different, because the victory is going to be the Lord's. The fight is God's, and if you let him fight his way, you'll have victory. If you keep trying to take over and say, I'm just going to try harder and build a bigger tower, or more ladders, or more arrows, or more fire, or more weapons, that's not going to work. And that's why you and I find ourselves defeated time after time after time, because we try to get in the middle of God's fight, and we try to tell him that we know how we should do it, and it just doesn't work. The third thing I want you to see today is it takes radical obedience to win the day. It takes radical obedience to God, even when it doesn't make any sense. And they have a decision to make. God said, walk around the city, go home. Come back the next day and do it again. Go back to camp and do it again and again. They have a decision to make. Are we going to do it the way we always did it, with better weapons and siege warfare? Or are we going to trust in the Lord? And this is where Joshua won the day, starting with verse 6. So Joshua, son of Nun, this is what they did. He called the priest and said to them, take up the ark of the covenant of the Lord, have 7 priests carry trumpets in front of it. He ordered the people to advance, ! March around the city with an armed guard going ahead of the ark of the Lord. When Joshua had spoken to the people, the 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets went forward, blowing their trumpets, and the ark of the Lord's covenant followed them. The armed guard marched ahead, and the priests who blew the trumpets and the rear guard followed the ark. And all this time, the trumpets were sounding. But Joshua had commanded the people, do not give a war cry. Do not raise your voices. Do not even say a word until the day I tell you to shout. And then shout. So he had the ark of the Lord carried around the city, circling it once. And the people returned to camp and spent the night there. Joshua got up early the next morning, and the priests took up the ark of the Lord, and the 7 priests carried the 7 trumpets. They went forward, marching before the ark of the Lord and blowing the trumpets. The armed men went ahead of them, and the rear guard followed the ark of the Lord while the trumpet kept sounding. And on the second day, they marched around the city once, and they returned to the camp. And they did this for 6 days. For 6 days, they did exactly what God said. And on the 7th day, God was going to give them victory. Can you imagine how hard it was to do that on days 4, day 5, and day 6? Because I'm sure that someone in that camp started complaining about, what are we doing? This is not working. On day 4 and day 5 and day 6, it is a testing of their faith. God said, do this. This is not working. I'm getting impatient. We're losing this battle. Why don't we do something different? Why don't we do something our way? Why don't we do something not the way God's telling us to do it? Why don't we let's do something different, because this is not working. And I'm sure that some of them wanted to quit. Imagine if they had quit on day 6. So close to victory, so close to God giving them a breakthrough in their life, so close to them having the walls come tumbling down. And yet on day 6, they would have quit, and they would have got discouraged, and they would have walked away knowing that they were this close. If only they had known they were this close to having everything that God had promised them. And yet they lost heart, and they quit. They didn't have faith, and they walked away. And for so many of us, isn't that true? That we want to quit, that we feel defeated in our lives, and yet we're on day 4 and it's hard, and day 5 is even harder, and day 6 is super hard. But let me tell you, someone needs to hear this today. Don't quit, because you're on day 5. You're almost there. You're on day 6. Don't quit. You're almost there. You're almost to the finish line. God is about to do something great in your life that only He can do. Don't quit. One day short of a victory in your life. Notice in verse 10, unusual thing that He said. In verse 10, He said, do not give a war cry. Do not raise your voice. Do not say a word till I tell you to shout. Because He knew that on day 6, if they said a word, it's not going to be a positive word. It's going to be a complaining word. It's going to be a frustrated word. He said, don't talk about it. Don't go listen to the complaints of others. Don't listen to the advice of other people, because when they open their mouth, they're going to sow dissent into your heart, and they're going to say things like, you need to quit. You need to walk away. You need to give up. You need to do something different. Instead of being faithful to God, you need to fight harder so that you can win. And yet we already know it is an obstacle that He cannot overcome Himself. And Joshua said, zip it, right? Button it, lock it, and put it in your pocket. Don't talk about it. Don't spread dissent. Don't ask other people, because when we start talking, we'll start sharing our frustrations instead of sharing our faith. And instead, be faithful to the Lord even on day 6. Don't quit one day short of your victory. Don't quit when you're so close to what God has for you. It is His fight. And because it's His fight, it's also going to be God's victory. Because of what God is asking you to be, God is going to give you victory in the moment when no one else can give victory. Don't walk away one day short. God's victory comes in verse 15 of chapter 6. Watch what happens when they're faithful to God, doing it God's way, waiting on God's timing. And here's what's happened. On the seventh day, finally they get to the seventh day. They got up at daybreak and they marched around the city 7 times in the same manner, except that on that day they circled the city 7 times. The 7th time around, when the praises and the trumpet blast, Joshua commanded the people, shout, for the Lord has given you the city. Shout. Be silent and then shout a praise to the Lord. Not shout so that you can intimidate the enemy. Be quiet as you walk around. It's not our job to intimidate. God is doing a work in our heart and our life. But give a shout of praise to the Lord, and then the walls will come tumbling down because God has given you the city. Drop down to verse 20. When the trumpet sounded, the people shouted, and at the sound of the trumpet, people gave a loud shout. And here it is. The walls collapsed. Did you know that archaeology records that the walls around the city of Jericho fell down all at the same time? All those walls, 1.5 miles around, both the outer and the inner walls, archaeology excavation has shown that those walls collapsed all at the same time. Archaeologists would try to say, must have been an earthquake. I would say, probably not. Probably the Lord just decided it was time. And in that moment, he gave them a victory. The walls collapsed. Keep going. So every man charged straight in, and they took the city. God gave them victory that no one else could give them. They didn't do anything. They didn't touch it at all. They just walked around, sang praises to the Lord, blew the trumpet, and gave a shout of praise to him, and the walls came tumbling down. That overwhelming obstacle in their life was completely destroyed. Verse 21, they devoted the city to the Lord. And they destroyed with the sword every little thing in it. Anything that was against the God, anything that was betraying him, that was in rebellion of him, had to go. They cleaned house. Every man, woman, child, every animal had to go. They made no quarter. There was no place in that city for anything that is rebellious to God. And when he gives you and I victory and those walls finally come down, that's what he wants of you and me. He wants for us to purify our hearts and our life, and God will win the day. And so we owe him everything, and we make no allowances for sin or for evil of thought or deed, of mind, of heart, of attitude. All of it has to be cleansed and given to the Lord. And when that day was over, because of Joshua's obedience, all that stood before him was a pile of rubble. Just a big pile of rocks. God won the day. Listen, I know that the things that you are facing seem huge. I know that these things are like overwhelming to you, and the things, the obstacles in your life are heavy and they're weighty, and you feel like that this is a battle that you cannot win. They're like a giant piece of stone. This is what your obstacle feels like, and I don't know what it is, but right now, God is bringing it to your heart. What is it that you struggle with? Is it fear of heart? Clarity of mind? Fear of following God and fear of failure? And you suffer with despair like Elijah, and you feel like, man, I just want to give up. Or you start sinking like Peter, and you think, God, I just can't do it. And you panic, and you experience this anxiousness and this panic in your life. Or you worry about the future and you can't trust God with it. These are weighty, heavy things in our life that and you feel like I have no answer. But you know what the problem was with Joshua? He thought that the battle was sword versus stone. That was not the battle. Sword versus stone, he's going to lose every time. They didn't have to do a sword anything. They didn't have to do a stone anything, because it was not a physical battle. It was a spiritual battle. And for so many times, you and I, we think that the obstacle in our life is a physical battle, but it's not. It's not sword versus stone. It's not you versus someone or you versus something. That's not the obstacle. If you're trying to fight a physical battle, you're going to lose. Do you hear me? You are going to lose every single time because the obstacle is too big. But the good news today is that it's not a physical battle. It is a spiritual battle that's being waged for your heart and for your mind and for your peace and against your fear. It's a spiritual battle versus your faith to trust God with your future and to trust God with everything that you're going to experience. Even though He has said, I am with you, I'm going to be there. It is a spiritual battle. And the good news is that God is a spiritual battle expert. Where you will fail, He will succeed. Stop fighting the battle in the physical world. That is not the place of victory. You're not going to win. You're going to be defeated over and over again. Instead, trust in God, in His timing, in His promise, and in His presence, and you will experience victory. How could Joshua face a wall that looked completely overwhelming? Don't forget the promises of God. Look at these verses. This is Joshua chapter 1. This is as they're entering into the promised land. I want you to look and see what He promised him. This is God telling Joshua before he ever got to the obstacle. This is what God said. Look at it. Be strong and what? Say it. Very courageous. Unusual that the Bible says very. Be strong and very courageous because you're going to need it. It's a big obstacle. It's a big battle. It's difficult. Lots of people run. Lots of people hide. Lots of people just melt in fear. But you're not going to, because God is telling you to be strong and very courageous. Be careful. Obey all the things that servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from these requirements from the left or to the right so that you can be successful wherever you go. Do not let this book of the law, God's law, depart from your mouth. Meditate on it day and night so that you can be careful to do everything that is written on it. Then you will be prosperous. Then you will be successful. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. There it is again. Do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. How can you have courage and not be terrified? It's the last part of that verse. The Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Whatever you face, whatever your struggle, whatever your heartache, whatever your barrier, whatever your secret sin, whatever the thing is that has you defeated time and time again, He is with you in the battle. And when He's ready, if you remain faithful to Him, He will bring those walls tumbling down in your heart, in your mind, in your marriage, in your life. He will bring victory. He will win the day. How can you and I face against fears that are overwhelming? When I think about a brave person who is strong and very courageous, I think of this guy right here. His name is Nick Vujicic. And Nick is a person who faced all kind of obstacles in his life. He was born with no arms and no legs. Can you imagine the fear that reigned in his heart? No arms, no legs. He had part of one leg with a little bit of a foot. He called it his chicken wing. Can you imagine what Nick Vujicic had to face every day? How do you dress yourself? No arms, no legs. How do you feed yourself? No arms. How do you drive a car? How do you get married? How do you have kids? How do you have a life that's as fulfilling? And yet he has accomplished all of those things. He is an internationally known motivational speaker. He used to be right here in America, and I heard his story, and I watched his videos, and I reached out to him to see if he would come speak at our Upward Basketball Awards night. And unfortunately, he had just gone international, meaning he had just gone overseas to start his world tour years ago. And I thought, man, I would love to sit in front of him and ask him about being courageous against such huge obstacles. To see him say, here's the secret to having victory in your life when so many things are against you. And some of the things that you would hear him say, he would say this: fear is a bigger disability than having no arms and legs. Fear will paralyze you even more than being in a wheelchair. You watched him climb up on a table by himself, set himself up right, and start talking to you about overcoming obstacles. Man, I feel pretty small. I think, man, I'm pretty weak. I give up too easy. Look what he's fighting against. And yet, he doesn't stop. He says the greater the struggle in your life, the more glorious will be the triumph when God gives you the victory. Amen? The bigger the triumph, the bigger the obstacle, the more glory is going to go to God. So that no one can say that you did it, only that God gave you the victory. And the last quote says, we may have no control over what happens to us, but we can control how we respond. You can't control what life throws at you, but how you respond, you can control that. You can trust the Lord, you can surrender to Him, or you can run, you can hide, you can freeze. How are you responding to the obstacle in your life? And are you trusting God for the victories over all the fears that we experience? Are you like Elijah who wanted to quit? Are you like Peter who was sinking because of his panic? Were you like Lot's wife who was frozen in her present, not trusting God in the future? Or are you going to be like Joshua who trusted God and God gave him victory over the obstacles in his life? Would you bow with me in prayer? I'm going to ask you, how are you responding today? Are you surrendering it to God? Are you willing to be whatever He asks you to be? I know it's hard. I know the walls are high. I know you failed. You see no way to have victory in you. I get that. Been there. And yet the challenge of God's word is to trust and to have faith and to surrender. And in God's timing, He will win the day. Father, I pray for victory in our lives today. I pray for victory in our hearts. I pray for victory over fear in our hearts and in our minds that controls us. I pray, Lord, for victory over a shallow, small faith that doesn't trust You with our future. And I pray, Lord, in these next few minutes that we would step out in faith and put our fears at Your feet and say, God, do a miracle that only You can do. We need it today, God. We need it. We're trusting in You. We're looking to You. And we pray this in Jesus' powerful name. Amen. A time of response where you can come and pray at the altar. You can pray where you are. We're going to stand and sing. And as we sing, it's a time of commitment to our God, trusting Him for our future. There'll be staff down front. We would love to pray with you. If you have a decision to make, we would love to pray with that. I'm going to ask you to stand where you are. And as we sing in our faith, let's trust in the Lord, for He is good.
You are here, moving in our midst. I worship You. I worship You. You are here, working in this place. I worship You. Oh, I worship You. You are here, moving in our midst. I worship You. Oh, I worship You. You are here, working in this place. I worship You. Oh, I worship You. feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop. Cause you are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Oh, and you are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. That is who you are. That is who you are. Yes, that is who you are. That is who you are. Oh, and that is who you are. Yes, that is who you are. Oh, that is who you are. That is who you are. Oh, 'cause you are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are.
God never stops working in your life. So don't let the fear of what's going on, your present circumstance, change that truth. God never stops working for your good. We have a group who's been working in Kentucky on the ATM mission trip. Be in prayer for them as they come back today. They've been the hands and feet of God this past weekend as they gave out Thanksgiving meals. Pray also for the youth who are traveling back from fall camp. A couple of quick announcements. We can be the hands and feet in Nashville this week. Pies, pie donations, 100 pies. I'm going to drop a challenge. We have failed the last 2 years. Let's not fail this year. We have failed to reach 100. But tomorrow from 8 to 4, you can bring pies in the main front lobby doors there. And Tuesday, 8 to noon, the only caveat, they cannot be refrigerated. No refrigerated pies, but they can be homemade. You can buy them in the store. 100 pies. Let's not fail for a third year. Big challenge, but it's really an easy challenge for us. A church our size, that should be no problem. Tomorrow and Tuesday. Also, the quilt, the Christmas quilt is for bid. You can place a bid on that. It's a Christmas time quilt. All the proceeds will go to the Lottie Moon offering. But if you've seen the quilt it's hanging, it's a year-round kind of quilt. So put your bid in before December 4th at 5 p.m. That is a Wednesday night. You have a week and a half to bid on the quilt. Of course, this week, Thanksgiving, for those of us who don't put Christmas trees up in October, it feels like the holidays now. We hope you have a great holiday week. Of course, no evening activities this coming Wednesday. But as you leave today, tell someone you're thankful for them. That's the easy part. Here's the hard part. Tell them why. So hope you have a great time this week with your family. We'll see you next Sunday.